Let's talk Jinx, a weekly Jinx video we do every Wednesday about anything to do with Jinx, as well as this video acting as a weekly discussion thread on the Jinx subreddit, our LeagueOfJinx. Make sure to go check that out. And every 2 weeks when a new patch hits, we talk about that patch, changes to Jinx on that patch, changes that might affect Jinx in terms of either items or matchup changes, because changes to other AD carries might affect that, and then we do something of a pseudo AD carry tier list to round the video out. So with that being said, we're just going to jump right into it. There were no changes actually directly to Jinx on this patch. However, there might be a few, matchup changes. One in particular, and this is really speculation, is Jhin actually. He's actually getting a Q attack damage increase, and the reason why I say this matchup might be affected, the Jinx-Jhin lane matchup, is just because giving him more damage on the Q might either increase his trading in lane, or it might increase his last hitting in lane and give him just more minion gold. Like, maybe this really, and probably doesn't change a whole heck of a lot, but maybe it does change those two things like a little bit. So you guys gotta watch out for that. If he's like, drop the Q on minions and they've all been last hit with them, it means if it's gonna hit you the fourth time, it's gonna crit and hurt for a lot. And now it's gonna hurt for like a little bit extra, so you wanna be more wary of that than maybe you have been in the past. Or again, he's using it to really just last hit minions, clear those out, get gold, and try and get fed that way if you can't really win against you. On top of that, there are some changes to some other supports, like Rakan and stuff like that, but Rakan Jinx lane, depending on who you ask, isn't really a lane people really play around a lot anyways. One thing that might change some supports overall, Relic Shield line, the healing's being decreased, so maybe like the tank supports that take Relic Shield might be nerfed like a little bit because of this, maybe not. And then there are changes to Stormrazor, which kind of at this point, I think maybe like Caitlyn and Tristana build, but Jinx is kind of more Infinity Edge, and then double Zeal item more so than Stormrazor anymore, but there is a change there as well, just to mention that because why not? So then also, Kayle and Morgana are going to be hitting this patch. Most likely with most reworks and new champions, people are going to be playing them support whether they can support or not. Morgana already kind of could, right? Like to an extent, I don't know how meta she is right now, but she kind of was a champion people did play support, even though the rework did buff her mid game more, so you probably will see her mid as well. Kayle, meanwhile, she does have a healing ability on her W, so people are going to use that to justify playing Kayle support. But otherwise, I mean, the ultimate's going to be pretty nice too when you hit level 6, but she's probably going to be more picked like top, maybe even jungle and mid, more so than support. But again, because it's like the first patch they're hitting, just be aware that lane is probably going to be a thing that exists, and we have talked about that in a previous episode. So now to get on to what you actually might be here for, and that's the pseudo AD carry tier list. I'm going to need your help making this tier list as well as we go over data and numbers and stuff. For two reasons. One, depending on the ELO, things your experience might be different. But two, not a lot really changed too much, so I don't really see a lot changing between these patches. I'm going to need your help identifying things that I might miss as we go over this data. So for example, let's look at champion.gg, all the different tiers from bronze all the way to platinum plus, and some trends and stuff we see there to maybe decide or figure out what might be carrying over into 9.5. So we kind of have to predict what's going to happen more so than anything else. So like in bronze, for example, what we see is like the top 10 or so AD carries. Jinx actually is number 1 at a 53.56% win rate, almost creeping towards 54. But we see like Misfortune, Sivir, Ashe, Vayne to round up the top 5. Twitch, Draven, Jhin, Tristana, Kog'Maw, and Caitlyn to round out the top 10, but like Jhin through Caitlyn, they're all sub 50. Now the thing about bronze and Jinx, a lot of people will say, but there's no peel down there, so how does Jinx, be so successful? Usually it's the idea that the winning team doesn't really know how to close out a game. So even though they don't, you have no peel for you, if a team has the lead, they might not close it out before you can still farm up, get your items, and then still get to the late game, where you don't need as much peel because you have 3 or 4 items, you're just creating people's faces off. Not saying it isn't still risky if you don't have peel to play down there, depending on the enemy comps, especially with Vibe possibly about to be meta, it's just a point and click ability. Right, that is a thing, but that's the answer to those people that ask that question. There's no peel down there, why could she possibly even have a 53% win rate down there? Games usually last longer, they're not closed out properly, and you have time to scale and get to that late game. That's really kind of the answer. That's bronze though. Let's move on to silver. We actually see Corki at the top of the AD carry list at a 53.88% list, but again, we see some familiar faces like Sivir, Jinx, Twitch, Kog'Maw to round out the top 5, Ashe, Vayne, Heimerdinger, and Cassiopeia for those mage champions down there, they're still hanging on. Misfortune and Draven, and in this particular instance, they all have over a 50% win rate or higher. Jinx in particular, 52.9, almost at 53 again. She's still pretty solid so far as a trend we're seeing already. Let's go to gold though. In gold, we see Kog'Maw, Heimerdinger up there actually at second, but again, Sivir, Jinx, Cassiopeia to round out the top 5, so a couple of those mage, champions a bit higher here. Twitch, Ziggs actually, Ashe, Miss Fortune, Vayne, and then even Corki at the 11th spot, and all of them have an over 50% win rate. So we're kind of seeing some familiar faces over and over, the Sivirs, the Jinxes, the Ashe, even Twitch a little bit, right? And especially in the top 5, Jinx has so far been kind of up here, even though we're only at gold. Let's move on to platinum and see what we see. In plat, Jinx is actually the #1 AD carry right now with a win rate of 53%. But again, Twitch, Silver, yes, Silver, Sivir. That would be a hard skin to say. Miss Fortune, Vayne, Ashe, Kog'Maw, Draven, Lucian, Caitlyn, and Tristana. Now, the 9 through 11 have, sub 50, but again, Draven, Kog'Maw, Twitch, Sivir, Jinx, Ashe. These are kind of things that have consistently kind of been at an above 50% win rate, and also in some cases top 5. And the reason that's kind of important, why I bring that up, is consistency is really how you climb more so than anything else. If you pick up a champion because they're broken, unless they're super broken, you don't auto-win games. You still got to at least kind of be able to play them. But if you can be consistent on a champion because a champion is consistent and you are consistent on them, that will help you climb. And so far, up till Platinum, we have a couple familiar faces in the AD carry role. Now, if we get to Platinum Plus, which is like Diamond and higher, what we see is, again, Jinx, Twitch, Ashe, Miss Fortune, Sivir. That's all the top 5 again. Vayne, Kog'Maw, Cassiopeia, Draven, and Lucian. And so across these different ELOs, a trend we kind of see is Jinx and Sivir were all, I believe, in the top 5 for all of these. Miss Fortune, Twitch, and Ashe were at least 3 times in the top 5, so they're kind of like mentions to put in there as well. In terms of mages, if that's kind of more your playstyle, you like that still, Heimerdinger and Cassiopeia are still hanging on at varying levels, and then a sleeper, according to these lists, might be Kog'Maw, because he's kind of in the top 10 for all of these. He's just not like the best. That's what we call it, a sleeper, right? So there is that so far. So looking at U.GG, one of the things they do here is, first of all, they flesh out each of the tiers individually a bit better, but also they have this thing kind of like the all tier, which is basically a champion's performance basically on average across all of the ELOs together. So that's what this first image is, in which case we see Yasuo, Jinx, Sivir, Miss Fortune, Ashe, Twitch, Vayne, Kog'Maw, Draven, and Tristana to round out the top 10. Yasuo being pretty high up there, Jinx being pretty high up there too at a 53% win rate and a pick rate of 18%, almost at 20%, which means 1 in 5 games on average you're seeing Jinx in your games, but also maintaining that high win rate, which is important because, again, A, consistency, but B, that also means that sometimes when a champion has a high pick rate, it can tank their win rate because a lot of people are winning on the champion, but a lot of people are losing on the champion. For example, Ezreal, some people will make the argument right now, he's kind of in that spot where his win rate should actually be better, but so many people are playing him right now that enough people are losing on him to kind of balance that out a little bit, if, that makes any sense. So if we get into the individual tiers for those that care, we start at Iron, actually. Yasuo's the #1 AD carry down there, with Miss Fortune, Kog'Maw, and Jinx, and Ashe rounding out the top 5. Sivir, Twitch, Quinn, actually, Draven, and Vayne round out the top 10, all of them with an above 50 or above % win rate except for that Vayne. Again, a lot of these champions, like even Jinx, 52.27% win rate, still that 18% pick rate. That's an example of a champion that's pretty good. Miss Fortune, meanwhile, is in 1 of 3 games down there with a 53, almost 54% win rate. So that's a champion, if you're down there, you might want to pick up as well. When it comes to bronze, it goes Yasuo, Jinx, Miss Fortune, Sivir, Kog'Maw, some familiar names for the top 5, but then Twitch, Ashe, Vayne, Draven, and Jhin even, Jhin being the only one below 50% on this list as well. Again, Jinx actually had a 53% win rate, almost a 20% pick rate, 1 in 20 games, or not 1 in 20 games, 1 in 5 games, almost, that's what that means. Miss Fortune actually above that 20% pick rate, also at a 52. Those are 2 in the lower ELOs that tend to perform pretty well. Again, like we said, even though there's a lack of peel, you can reach that late game and do stuff like that. So if we move on to Silver, take a shot every time I mess that up. Silver, we actually see Yasuo, Jinx, Sivir, Ashe, Twitch, Miss Fortune, Vayne, Kog'Maw, Draven, and Tristana. Draven, Tristana below 50%, but Kog'Maw and Up 51 or higher, and again, kind of the same trends, the patterns we're seeing. Jinx at a 53% win rate, almost at a 20% pick rate. Miss Fortune does drop off in the pick rate here, but she still has like a 51, almost 52% win rate. That's something you can still pick up. We do see more Ashe and Sivir above her though, and up in that top 5 again. Twitch obviously in their conversation as well. But like again, Yasuo's that kind of dominating, but I think it depends if you can play Yasuo right now as well. That's probably a very important part of it. Moving on to gold is when we see Jinx take over as like the #1 champion you can play in the bottom lane. Yasuo's still in the top 2, he's number 2, but Jinx at a 53.62% win rate, that's actually getting higher. She's almost at 54% and kind of maintaining that pick rate. Miss Fortune does kind of fall down in the pick rate here, still at a 51.5% win rate. But again, Sivir, Ashe, they're still up there. Twitch is still up there. Vayne's still up there. Tristana still rounding up the top 10. So now if we get into platinum, Jinx still maintains that #1 spot. The pick rate does go down a little bit to 16%. So instead of 1 in 5, it's like 1 in 6% play rate. But again, Ashe and Sivir are pretty good, the utility AD carries. Sivir with the high pick rate as well. Yasuo drops to 4th place actually. So there is that. His win rate goes down from 54% to about 52% on average here. Vayne, Twitch, Draven, Miss Fortune, Kog'Maw, and Lucian trying to hang on for dear life up there. But there we go. Draven, I think, is kind of hovering around in all of these lists just because he is a lane bully that can try and shut these down before they really get rolling if you want to kind of go for that playstyle against these champions. Once we get to Diamond, Twitch takes over as the #1 AD carry, but Jinx is still up there at 2nd place, drops down a little bit to a 52% win rate instead of the 53 she had, and the pick rate does go down to about 12, which my math is terrible, but that's about 1 in 8 games actually, from the 1 in 6, and of course the almost 1 in 5 that she was at, but still maintaining over 52% win rate. Again, we see the Ashe to round up the top 5 with Vayne. Draven spikes a bit more because people are more mechanically good at this point, so they can kind of use what we just said to shut down these AD carries, these hyper scaling ones in lane a bit more. We do see some Kalista as well, possibly for some of the same reason, the changes she got, and also she can bully in lane a bit as well. Yasuo dropping to the 10th spot, but still maintaining an over 50% win rate, so there is that. When we get to Master Tier, that's when it starts getting a little bit spicy, because Kog'Maw is actually the #1 AD carry at a 56% win rate, even though it's a 1% pick rate, which means like 1 in 100 games you'll see him. Apparently he's going to smash really, really hard, with a very low ban rate as well. We do see things like Twitch, Ashe, Vayne, and Sivir round out the top 10, or the top 5 actually. With only Vayne and Sivir having play rates or pick rates above that 10%. Vayne actually almost in the 1 in 5 percentile, and all of them having over a 51% win rate. Jinx actually drops down to 10th place and rounds out the top 10 with still a 50% plus win rate and a pick rate of about 1 in 10 games. This is where it gets even more spicy, regardless of what we just said, because if we get to Grandmaster, Jinx is actually back to being the #1 AD carry with a 58% win rate and still a 7% pick rate. So like the previous list where it's like, oh, Kog'Maw 56, but like a 1% pick rate, Jinx still has about a 7%, almost 8% pick rate, and is somehow maintaining a 58% win rate. And Grandmaster, that champion might actually be powerful, huh? Yasuo creeps back up here with a 56% win rate. Xayah actually makes an appearance with Kalista and Vayne rounding out the top 10. We still see Sivir, Lucian, Tristana, Caitlyn, and Draven to round out the top 10. But Jinx, oh my goodness, if she was powerful, now is the time to play her, I'm telling you. And finally, in Challenger, we have Ashe, Draven, Vayne, Twitch, Jinx, Cassiopeia, Tristana, Sivir, Lucian, and Caitlyn. Jinx in the 51% with an 8% pick rate actually. Ashe with a low pick rate, but probably the best AD carry up there right now. But again, if we go to some trends that we've seen now amongst this, in the concurrent one and even with the individual tiers, Jinx, Sivir, and Ashe, again, consistent. Yasuo is a consistent non-traditional AD carry. Twitch is pretty good. Miss Fortune's like a low-key or like a low elo sleeper, while Draven's probably good for climbing if you want to go against the grind and try and use a pick to kind of shut down these different AD carry picks. But man, that 58% win rate in Grandmaster. Holy moly, Jinx. Now, if you go to a site like op.gg, in which case, if we go, this is kind of based off of Korea specifically, mind you, and if we go off of tier list, they actually have Vayne, Jinx, Sivir, Lucian, Kai'Sa, Ezreal, Caitlyn, Ashe, Draven, and Kalista as their top 10 AD carries right now, with like things like Vayne, Jinx. It might be a little bit hard to see on the screen, but like Vayne and Jinx have a 52% win rate, Sivir has a 51, Lucian with a 50, but things like Kai'Sa, Ezreal, and Caitlyn have like a 48% win rate. Ashe actually has a 51% for them, Draven has a 52% for them, and Kalista has a 49%. So half the tier list actually has a sub 50% win rate. And that might be something to do with the role or these champions not synergizing with crit all that well. The last time the crit Ezreal build was even viable, I believe, was like Season 5, the last time I was able to play that and win on it. So there is that. When it comes to their win rates, of course, if you organize it that way, they have Cassiopeia as the top champion down there at a 52% win rate, with Vayne, Jinx, Draven, and Ashe rounding up the top 5, Sivir, Yasuo, Twitch, Misfortune, and Lucian rounding up the top 10. So again, with the trends, we're still seeing the kind of the same champions respawn in the same way, right? Like Jinx and Vayne in the top 3 on both of those lists. Sivir and Ashe vary, but are above 50% win rate in all those cases. And last but not least, we'll look at Mobalytics' tier list, actually, both their regular one and their high elo one. So for the regular tier list, they have Yasuo, Twitch, Sivir, and Jinx as their S tier, Draven, Ezreal, Kalista, Kai'Sa, Vayne, Lucian, Jhin, Caitlyn, Ashe, Kog'Maw, Misfortune, Tristana as their A tier, and then Corki, Varus, Xayah, and Mordekaiser as their B tier. And when you switch to the high elo list, Jinx does drop down into the A tier, which is still pretty good. But Yasuo, Draven, and Sivir are still some of the best AD carries, with Ashe also being in that A tier. So what does this mean overall for trends and stuff as we round out this video? It kind of means we've seen a consistent amount of champions kind of across the board in these higher spots, right? Jinx especially, probably on the radar for nerfs. Sivir and Ashe, Twitch on the radar, probably for nerfs. I don't want to jinx it, but like there probably are if they're consistently this good across all of these different elos, right? It's not like it's just low elo that some champions are stopping. Some of these champions are doing really great in high elo. And yes, pick rate might dictate that a little bit, but it does mean for consistency's sake, you do see things like, Jinx, Sivir, Ashe, and Twitch as good AD carries to probably climb with on this patch because nothing changed. The honorable mention, or like the asterisk, will be Jhin, because those Q grenade changes might actually be better than I think they're going to be, because he might then go like a lethality build, try and snowball early. I'm kind of speculating, and I don't really think the numbers back up what I'm saying, but I want to put that out there because, hey, just be aware that could be a thing. You might see more Jhins in your games when you're playing Jinx, but that's going to be all for this video. So thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Hit that bell notification, the actual subscribe button, and in the comment section down below, if you're in your own ELO, what have you seen in your ELO that dictates what you think is actually a good tier list, what champions will be good or weak, and comment with that down below. So, I don't know this video will be next, because I can have a lot of kinks. So until this time, take care. GG, get jinxed. Thank you for watching, and enjoy pizza responsibly.